In contexts most affected by the adverse effects related to climate change, women are more vulnerable than those effects than men, primarily as they constitute the majority of the world's poor and are more dependent for their livelihood on natural resources that are threatened by climate change. Furthermore, they face social, economic and political barriers that limit their coping capacity. When coupled by unequal access to resources and to decision-making processes, limited prior mobility places women in rural areas in a position where they are disproportionately affected by climate change. Also in Catalonia, where women working in rural areas have to face challenges related to their gender identity, and in addition to those challenges related to climate change. As a consequence of climate change, it's likely that we will experience an increase of flows of both internal and cross-border human migration over the next decades. The migratory consequences of environmental factors result in higher death rates for women in less developed countries, as directly linked to socioeconomic status, to behavioral restrictions, and poor access to information. In addition, we know that women face major risk when during the journey and in the country of destination compared to women. Risk of sexual assaults, violation, trafficking is thus crucial to identify gender-sensitive strategies to respond to environmental and humanitarian crises caused by climate change. It is important to remember that women are not only vulnerable to climate change, but they are also effective actors of agents of change in relation to both migration and adaptation. The consultation and participation of women in climate change initiatives must be ensured and the role of women's groups and networks strengthened. Currently, women are underrepresented in the decision-making process of environmental governance. They should be equally represented in decision-making structures to allow them to contribute their unique and valuable perspectives and expertise on climate change. Women can make substantive contributions through their knowledge and experience on issues related to management of natural resources. We have to be aware on the fact that countries with a high level of gender inequality generally have a higher level vulnerability to the negative impacts on climate change.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Melissa KERIM-DIKENI, and I work at the OECD on the Water Governance Program. Today, I will introduce some of our work on the effects of climate change, including water-related effects on women. First of all, I will start with something we all know. Women and girls are disproportionately affected by the effects of climate change. In many developing contexts, women's livelihood are dependent on climate-sensitive sectors such as agriculture, forestry, and water. More specifically on water, women often face the negative health effects of poor water quality and untreated wastewater because of the role they play in household, including cooking, cleaning, and childcare. And this is particularly true in developing countries. For example, according to UNDP in Sub-Saharan Africa, it is estimated that women and girls spend about 40 billion hours per year transporting water. The effects of climate change, among which 70% will manifest in the water sector, would put even more women at risk. So what is needed to ensure that the challenges that women are facing in relation to climate change and water scarcity are more and more taken into consideration in policymaking? First, at the OECD, we believe that more gender disaggregated data is needed. In fact, on gender and the environment, for example, according to a recent OECD report, only 7 OECD countries out of the 38 member countries collect gender disaggregated data related to the environment. And only 13 OECD countries consider gender aspects in their environmental policy making. That's not enough. On women and water, gender disaggregated data is needed, especially on first women's access to clean water and sanitation, but also on the involvement of women in water decision making. And that leads me to my second point, which is that women should play a more important role in decision-making. This is why the OECD is leading the Women in Water Decision-Making program. This program aims to generate evidence on how the engagement of women can support good water governance and increase efficiency and sustainability of water management processes. This research is aligned with the OECD principles on water governance, and in particular Principle 10, which recommends to pay special attention to underrepresented communities, including youth, women, and indigenous communities. Thank you very much for listening, and I am looking forward to engaging with you during the interactive discussion.
Actually, it's a funny question, isn't it? How do women, gender issues, climate connect? What do women contribute, propose? As part of the majority of the world population, it's obvious, but maybe it's so obvious that we do not notice. Women tend to be hands-on, do their thing, and then people go, how wonderful, never thought about it. Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds to giggle, and then get serious again. I'm done with being nice. We're wasting huge potential and knowledge. Dear men, do not pat us on the back and tell us you will take care of it. It's patronizing, but it's also untrue. Lots of talk and little action. I would say support your women. Observe, absorb, and join. So what happens on the ground? Women do understand what's going on, but may not use the official language. They understand and experience. Science is not the only measure. Good documentation of life experience is needed. Women started planting trees to preserve the banks of their rivers. Small potato? Nothing to do with our big concept of IWRM or climate change adaptation. Women made sure they harvested the rain in their home gardens. How silly to do that at such a small scale. But in the meantime, their harvest went up by 40%. Women started to discuss choices of crops, even across the river, to create a regional market. Men stood there with their back to the river. Right, you get me. When you do not honor the smaller and not invented by me, you will not go anywhere. My wonderful colleagues in Asia conducted a series of webinars on women, water, and climate last year fall. Please watch our webinars on our Women for Water website. What you see there is on-the-ground solutions, but also the support they need from the global community. Let's rephrase. The women do the work. They may not speak your language, but listen and watch. If you do not like the leadership label, they act. There were numerous floods across the globe, and pointed out by my esteemed colleague, look at the pictures. What do women carry on their heads while they swim way to safety? See what is important for women. Droughts lead to the domino effect. Happy to explain that later. If we do not support the female-headed households, we will create our own problem with internal displacement and migration. So, the policy language. Make sure the money gets to the ground. Ensure timely and understandable information to reach women. Assist with internet and ICT access. Take local initiatives serious. Open up formal vocational training for women. I'm Lesja Whitmer, Women for Water Partnership. Thank you.
Greetings to all, and wonderful to be part of the Cassandra conference, an inspiring and most promising interaction framework. Warm thanks and congratulations to the organizers. I am Dr. Anfie Bruma, Deputy Regional Coordinator and Diversity Theme Leader at the Global Water Partnership Mediterranean, and I'm honored to be part of Panel 5, where we're discussing the interlinkages between climate change and gender inequality. We all know that climate change will affect even more so in the future, all of us and in different ways, but women and men do not experience climate change equally. In many parts of the Mediterranean region, economic constraints and cultural norms restrict women's access to paid jobs, making their livelihoods particularly dependent on climate-sensitive sectors. Moreover, gender inequalities in the distribution of assets and opportunities mean that the choices of women are severely constrained in the face of climate change. The fact that women and girls are often responsible for most of the unpaid care tasks around the household also means their lives are directly affected by the changes brought about by climate change. As a result, women and girls find themselves with less time for education, income-generating activities, or participation in planning, policy, and decision-making processes, further cementing unequal gender relations. This is not to say that men are not negatively affected by climate change. On the contrary, they are, and particularly when they are poor. However, women and girls commonly face higher risks and greater burdens from the impacts of climate change in situations of poverty. And let's not forget that the majority of the world's poor are women. Mediterranean societies, particularly in the South and the East, are critically exposed to water challenges and the effects of climate change due to structurally embedded social norms and structural inequalities. This is particularly prominent for marginalized and vulnerable groups, including women. The striking gender imbalances are reinforced where national, legal, and policy frameworks ignore gender equality challenges. Regretfully, this is the case in many parts of the Mediterranean. Therefore, addressing structural inequalities resulting in poverty at a much broader level emerges as being a central condition for successful climate adaptation and resilience. To support the Mediterranean's global commitments under Agenda 2030 and the Paris Climate Agreement, and in the aftermath of COP26, decisions on planning, on institution building, and on investments that relate to water and natural resources must take a transformative approach towards gender inequalities. At the Global Water Partnership Mediterranean, we're working closely with the countries of the region to assist them design and shape institutional and infrastructure investments in a way that they will transform the gender dimensions of development. I will not bore you with figures and statistics about the impacts of gender equality on political economies. These are well documented. What I would like is to prompt all of us to be more engaged and act, as our Mediterranean region is facing a gloomy scenario when it comes to climate change impacts, and it's not moving quite as quickly up the gender equality ladder. Let's prove that we care and that our words are backed by actions. Look forward to seeing you and to exchanging directly during the conference. Thank you.
Dealing with the phenomena of climate change has always been complex because of its link to all aspects of life that surround us. When it is combined with the issue of gender inequality, the issue becomes more sensitive as there are still many gaps that have not been adequately addressed or even shed light on. Undoubtedly, women and girls are the weakest links in this circle, as they are not equitably integrated or engaged when it comes to tackling climate change or global warming. The issue is not philosophical as much as it is realistic. Because when looking closely, we realize that women and girls are the most affected group due to crises and disaster caused by the phenomenon of climate change. When thinking from another angle, we see that women are the most influential in a positive way if they involve participating in finding solutions to combat the effects of climate change at various levels, because they are most aware of what they suffer due to its effects, whether at the lowest level, starting from investment level, research and academia level, and at the higher levels through gender mainstreaming into higher decision-making processes. For instance, women are the ones who suffer the most due to the lack of water and its interruptions at the household levels. According to what is known, women are more obligated to perform domestic duties, and the lack thereof increases the burden, stress, and time on women to provide alternative water and solution. And thus, the lack of distribution roles of household tasks between men and women, it may affect the quality of services provided by women, whether inside or outside the house. This is one of the indirect effects of the climate change and how the unfair distribution role can affect one party and not the other. And there are still many of indirect and direct effects that need to be documented. In fact, we lack confirmed studies and statistics on gender differentiated impacts of climate change, as these differences can be witnessed with different variations between society and another, and between time and another. So documenting these data are very essential in order to reveal the gaps and put in place close steps to find solution to them in the short and long term. I believe that the world has recently changed, and there is a wide awareness of the importance of integrating gender in the various issues facing us and treating women and men alike in order to impose balance at various levels. Despite there has been remarkable progress in this framework, we still need more efforts at various levels in order to find just solutions to create a balance in our lifestyles in parallel with a fair distribution of gender roles in our lives, thus combating the effects of climate change and the reflection of adaptation to it on us based on the gender roles distributed in a fair manner.
Hello, my name is Aisha Nankanja. I am the founder and executive director of Rural Water Initiative for Climate Action Limited. Rural Water Initiative for Climate Action Limited is a community-based non-profit organization that constructs open water sources into improved water systems to improve the health of people and their animals in rural communities in Uganda. Since inception in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic has pressed a heavy toll on the availability of clean and safe water in communities. We have carried out a number of interventions to rectify and course-correct this problem to ensure clean water availability through monitoring water quality. Through this, we have created local water forums comprising of 7 out of 10 local women to monitor the clean water availability in rural communities of Kamengo sub-county in Mpigi district. The pictures below can clearly portray the events that are taking place in our community that are promoting water quality in Uganda. RICA is alleviating water scarcity among low-income families in rural hard-to-reach areas. Women and children bear the biggest burden of water scarcity. Children do not attend to classes because they are looking for water. This affects their school attendance. Women do not concentrate on income-generating activities because they are looking for water and they are searching for water in long distances. They lack water collecting containers as well. Children are suffering from diarrhea. According to the Health Center 3 in Kamengo sub-county, 9 out of 10 children die due to diarrhea every day and other water-related illnesses. RICA is constructing water kiosks to help rectify and course-correct this problem. We carry out awareness raising and sensitization campaigns to help the community understand the role of safe, clean water to socio-economic development. We involve women through a citizen engagement criteria and other community leaders in groups and water education campaign programs to sensitize the community through engaging the community towards providing community-based solutions towards safe and clean water. Women are facing the biggest burden, therefore we engage women leaders to help identify the problems and have shared learning experiences towards economic social development in terms of water. We engage the youth in climate resilient activities like tree planting to enable availability of safe and clean water because trees play a big role on the availability of clean and safe water.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here today. It's a real pleasure. I think we are going to have a very interesting discussion with so many specialists, particularly in the area of how water and the relationship with climate change affect disproportionately women and girls and children as well. So as you have seen in the videos, some common themes seem to have emerged. So I would like to give our panelists the opportunity to speak about some of these aspects in more details. One of the main themes that have emerged is the fact that there are cultural differences and cultural norms that are embedded, and women are generally dedicated to roles that do not allow them to prosper and then make them more badly affected by climate change effects. So how would you suggest that women in this situation can start playing their role in combating climate change and become really political, social, and economic leaders, particularly bearing in mind that they have the knowledge of what's happening on the ground? Who would like to start giving their views on that? Anfie, you made a very good contribution. Would you like to start answering that question, please?
Gladly. Hello to everybody. Very happy to be with you today. Thank you very much, Rosa, for the facilitation of this panel. Well, what really to say? I mean, we all know that you know, concrete steps have been made in the right direction. Change is underway, but we're still very far from our goal. And it's actually many decades that we have been, you know, striving for gender equality, and we're not exactly, you know, very close to that. It seems that we keep forgetting that this whole thing is actually socially constructed, and therefore it can be changed. So it is really within our hands to make a difference and signify something. But we are quite, I guess, quite. Sorry, let me just silence, you know, all the other noises. Apologies for that. So we keep forgetting that actually it is socially constructed, and therefore we can actually change it. And when it comes to this intersection between gender equality and climate change, we often find that these structurally embedded social norms and structural inequalities are, you know, affecting communities and groups and people living in disadvantaged contexts and with high poverty prevalence. And therefore, these are the ones that are more severely exposed to the effects of climate change. What can we do in that respect? First and foremost, it is a way forward could be to address these structural inequalities that result in poverty. And this actually touches upon the much broader level, as I also mentioned in the initial statements. And this emerges as a very good and a very solid condition for successful climate adaptation and resilience. At the same time, it is a multidimensional, let's say, process. It has to, first of all, come from within the individual, believing in change and actually working through action in order to make the change, and then at the wider level, addressing these structural inequalities. It is also about not just encouraging, but really demanding that governments and practitioners ensure women's active participation in leadership and decision-making roles, also to analyze the impacts of climate change and the social and economic consequences of migration from a gender perspective. So make sure that this is adequately covered, increase women's access to finance, technology, and capacity building, and mainstream gender into all national adaptation strategies and action plans. More importantly, and what I would also like to pose to my fellow panelists is,
do we care about what's happening, with gender equality? Thank you very much, Rosa.
I think
That's a very, what do you call that? Strong question, Anfie. I think if you ask the question here, everybody will say they care. And then I sometimes look at my own behavior. And just like my grandmother, just like my great-great-grandmother, I have habits. So I automatically presume, and this I think is one of our biggest challenges, that in some cases the guy is the better professional or knows better. And this is not because I've seen that it was true, but that is ingrained in our education. So I've learned myself to every time, if I make statements on professional capacities, if I look at solutions, to say, hold on a minute, am I now reacting because I presume, or am I reacting because it's actually true? And I think that's a question we women have to ask ourselves all the time, but also asked of the men. Is this a habit because it was always like that, or because it's an actual truth in our day and age? So the profiling, I think, is one of our biggest problems. You talked, Anfie, about roles, and I think Gadir was talking about that as well. And one of them is that for a very, very long time, I still think today, women accept those roles. And I think one of the biggest changes in the last couple of years is that women have started to say, are you sure this is my role? Because there are other stuff I can do even better, or I like better, or I would like to be educated in. So I think the mindset of some of the women has changed. They're actually challenging this notion that has come through the centuries and saying, I'm not quite sure that this is still true. Might have been logical long time ago, but it isn't anymore. And I think that's start number one, that every time we ask ourselves those questions, also us as women, because we do have the same perceptions. And I think that's for me, the biggest change is that there are more and more women that say, hold on a minute, I think maybe we can do this differently. And this is not just an issue for developing countries, but also for developed countries. We haven't solved it either. So there's still a long way to go. When it comes to climate change, I think there's one funny effect there, that women have all kinds of roles, but the role they have in climate change is not seen. My video was broken, I think. So one of the things I said there was, if women do a project, for instance, on restoring riverbanks, planting trees, ensuring that pollution is cleaned up, then everybody says, oh, what a nice local project. No. This is high level. And the thing is, everybody sees it as a small action, but it isn't. If you multiply that, you have a worldwide action. And that's a role that's not recognized. The role that women do play already in local solutions, but nobody is patting them on the back and say, what wonderful that you did that. Let's make it bigger. No, they say, oh, how nice of you. So that's another attitude that we have to change. It's not nice, it's necessity. And those women know that. But I'll stop here, Rosa, otherwise you get upset.
No, I'm not getting upset at all, and we have started receiving some questions from the audience. So I would like to give the word to MIREIA, because I have seen her saying yes all the time. So probably you have a comment, and then perhaps we can start with some comments from and questions from the audience. Mireia?
Yes, okay, Rosa, yes. I was doing like this because I do agree with what Anfie and also Aisha were explaining. I think these conceptions, these ancient conceptions that they do operate still today has a name, and it's patriarchal society, because we used to still thinking like as Aisha say, the grandmother, the old grandmother, the all and all. But the situation today in the whole the world, in Europe also, is that women still working much and much on the rural areas, in the small villages, in agricultural situations, but still being a very few part of the owners of these properties. So women still working a lot, but still being non-visible to at level of the propriety. So when the people is called to talk about things, someone looks for the name. Who belongs this field, this farm, these animals, and the names are always the names of the men. So always are men talking about this because they are the owners. This is a big problem, because if we are not a part of the owners, just working or many times illegal workers, we will never be called at the table of the making decisions persons. So I think this is a big problem. For me, it has this name, patriarchal society, and we have to reverse this situation, looking for women being recognized as the proprietaries of these goods, the farms, the animals, the small factories, who are not. They always still working and working, but are men who say, I have done this. So we have to reverse this situation. For me, this has a name, is a gender equality policy.
If I can reply very quickly
Absolutely.
to what
Sure.
Mireia has just said, because it's very relevant, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. But obviously, women are still largely underrepresented in high-level public and private positions, especially of finance and infrastructure planning, and that's linked to what you just said. I mean, if women cannot decide on the budget and on the finance, then I mean, it's difficult also to trigger a systematic change. So just for example, if we look at OECD data, only 4 out of the 37 OECD member countries had women heading their government's finance portfolio in June 2020, and that's definitely not enough to trigger the systematic change we need. We need more women at this decision-making position. And the more we are, then we can really trigger this systematic change we need. And that's working for our environment, but for all the other sectors as well.
I completely agree. Thank you very much, Melissa, Mireia, Anfie, Aisha. Yeah, I think we are all in agreement on that. So then perhaps from the audience, a little bit of a provocative question, if you want. To what extent have women themselves been responsible for the continuity or indeed the rise of gender discrimination in the Mediterranean? For example, mothers who treat their sons and daughters differently. I think this goes into these cultural norms and the patriarchal societies that perhaps even ourselves have been brought up into. So who would like to come and address that? Perhaps Gadir, who hasn't spoken yet. Would you like to come up?
Yes, thank you. Well, actually, this is a great question. And I think from my point of view, I would like to say, with no excuse for what we talked about before, my colleagues, but sometimes the personality of the woman herself plays a leading role. Either she herself overwhelmed the applicable laws or the society and refuses what to be neglected in the community, or she accepts the situation that has been imposed on her, and therefore maybe she will remain a nobody forever. So her personality play a great role in order to change this situation and to engage herself in the policy and in the mainstreaming in the policy making processes and so on. So in the opinion of the woman herself, sometimes she is the one who makes changes with her own hands and does not wait for it from anybody else. So, and this is one of the most important success stories that we already hear at the present time from many women in the world. Yes.
Thank you, Gadir. Aisha, would you like to present your viewpoint on how the situation is in the area of the world where you are?
About what? Yes, about what it does get on the chat. I do agree that we women, also men, we do reproduce these patriarchal schemes we receive from our elders. So that is true, and that's because it's true. We have to fight against it, and we have to work on these gender equality policies. I would like to remind what Vivienne Reding said about European policy. Said, I don't like quotas, but we must do something. So we need quotas effect. I know this is a matter perhaps not everybody do agree, but if we don't do something really strong with the support of the law, we will always still reproducing these patriarchal schemes that they do exist for men and for women. So we must do something to change how things has been, as Lesha said, from the mother, the grandmother, the old grandmother. So we have to react.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I react to that, Rosa?
Absolutely. Okay.
Because, well, I had two comments. One, I very much agreed with the comment on land ownership. Of course, we have to change that. And it's already a problem everywhere and for centuries. And it's not easy to do. But there is one thing we can do. We, as people who try to influence what happens in the water sector, can make sure that if we raise awareness, if we do courses, if we call meetings, that we don't look at the ownership, we look at the workers. So we address another group and ask them to come. And that might cause some upset in the community. But once they figure out that it might be helpful, it will continue. So it's also our mindset. Why are we training the farmer owner and not the workers? You know, because the workers are the majority of the women. Why do we presume that if something goes wrong in a family, the woman will stay home and do the work to care? I always remember the big role my father played in my education. And what he did was he refused to accept that I would do the dishes. Instead, he told me to repair the electricity plug. So he did totally different things in terms of practical education that were also against my type. And I think there, the men are sometimes more effectful than the women. Because the men will say, not even consciously, oh, my daughter can do that. And the woman will say, no, my son needs to do it. And that's already a big difference in mindset. This also goes for water. Why is it the girl that has to carry the water and not the stronger boy? I don't know. Why is it the woman who has to clean up and not the whole family together, you know? So it sometimes starts with very small things. And the same goes for the impacts on climate change. Why don't we teach women to swim? Why don't we make sure that they know where to go if something goes wrong in terms of floods and droughts? Why don't we accept that if the guy leaves the house, one of us was talking about migration, then all the benefits will go to the woman that stays behind and has to take care of the family. And in some cases, the women don't even ask for it because they think it's hopeless. So what one of us, I'm not sure it was Melissa, no, it was Aisha. You said one of the things we do is raise awareness. And I think that's where some of this starts, that you have a right to be heard, you have a right to, etc. Coming back to the quota, yes, we need quota. And why? Because we even have to force ourselves to make sure we get in those positions. Are they effective as such and enough? No, they're not. So another quota I would like to see, well, no, it's not, the quota is not the right word, another rule. If you have a meeting, you record what the women said and if their proposals or ideas were accepted, because then you will get into content. If you just count how many female heads are in the room, that will not do the trick. But if you start making sure that they can speak up, you as a chair, for instance, if you make sure that the note taker takes note of what the women were saying and whether their proposal was accepted, even if it's just one woman taking the floor and making a proposal that is accepted, that has the most impact you can think of. But that's not how we train the meetings. We're not training the chair to say, I just heard a very interesting idea from MIREIA. Could you repeat that for us, please? Because I think we should adopt it. You know, this kind of attitude, this kind of managing would change a lot. Rosa, back to you.
Thank you, Lesha. I think I'm just going to make a quick comment on that, because I think this is not something that affects less developed countries. We still see in all the meetings, in all situations of management, companies, governments, academia, where you are in a meeting with men and women and a woman will put an idea forward and will be ignored. And 5 minutes later, a man will put the same idea forward and it will be said, it's fantastic. So yeah, women voices need to be heard much more than they are. But I would like to give Aisha the opportunity to speak as well, because I can see that she has something to say about it, probably related to your comments, Lesha. So Aisha, the floor is yours now.
Thank you once again, Rosa and Lesha and all the speakers. Just to re-echo what Lesha you've mentioned about, it's really important that what we can do to address the challenge of climate change and gender inequality is to empower women to step up in the spaces where they can be able to speak and be heard about the issues that are very pertinent to them and they're affecting them in terms of environment and the changes in the climate. So if we can help women organize, having organized work can really be a tool that can help us have formidable and collective action towards these kind of challenges. So promoting an enabling environment where we can come together as women from local level, global levels, and be able to speak up and in unison, then we can be able to amplify our voice and also increase our bargaining power in climate issues and deals, as well as helping us in unison accept the climate crisis that is actually affecting us and is going to have diverse effects now and for the future generations. So speaking explicitly, I think it's really important that we really, I'm happy that we agree in unison that promoting play a great role towards this kind of problems that we are facing currently. For example, if you look at Uganda in per se, this where I am, I work in a rural community, but it will be very propelling to mention that literally in every home you go to, at least 2 of the thirds, you'll find that they are suffering from water-related illnesses like diarrhea, and this exasperates the magnitude of the problem. Because the rates, so the only available water resources are very few, and they are in conflict between people and animals, because even their people live with their animals since time immemorial. If it's look at migration, people live with their animals wherever they go. And so these are societies that are heavily dependent on natural resources and some small social grants from the government, which are not reliable at per se, but the natural resources are there. So if we have human-induced activities that are propagating and increasing climate change, then we need to address these. We need to have interventions towards these kind of activities that are actually destroying the climate, right from the local level to the global levels, and being able to speak up and saying, hey, look here, women can really play a big role. They are not only vulnerable, but they are also great agents and change makers who can share ideas on how we can be able to move and live harmoniously in nature without destroying it. So I really think having such platforms can help to amplify the voice of women. This is something that the Cassandra conference is really taking a very much big credit. And I must say thank you very much to the organizers of this conference and all the speakers on this panel. Thank you very much, because you're really adding a stone to amplifying the voice of women towards gender and climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. We know there was a bit of cut in the voice, so we have lost a bit of your message, but hopefully everybody get the bigger picture. I would like to pick up some of the ideas that we have shared up to now, to go to something that some of you have already mentioned, and is the issue of climate-related migration, and how it affects probably much more rural areas. So in which sense that affects women more severely, and what do you think can be done when we look into migration policies, whether it is rural to urban or international migration? What can be done so that these negative effects are not felt so much by women and girls? Who would like to speak first? Lesha?
Well, that was another part of my video that was cut off. So I'll repeat it here. In our organization, we call it the domino effect. So something goes wrong in the rural area. Most of the times these days, that's drought. Then the young guys leave, they go to the city, and we have a female-headed household who is not supported. Now, probably if she would be supported, she would stay there and make something really nice out of it, but she's not. So at one point, she also moves to the city, hoping to reconnect with her husband or her sons. Of course, there's no jobs there. There's no good housing there. There is not enough basic facilities there. So at one point, she gets desperate and she thinks, okay, this is not the solution. And she starts moving to an area where she thinks there will be a solution, etc., etc., etc. So it's like a piece of domino stones that fall over. And basically, because we already forgot to do something about the original situation. Something similar is happening with floods. We have warning systems. Now, who do we warn? The guy. Okay, thank you very much. So the guy runs away, leaves the woman with the children, and the woman has no idea where to go. So she thinks, I'll stay where it's safe, which is my house, because that's what I know. But of course, the flood will hit her. The muds will hit her. So there she goes. But the guy has already run away. So where's this woman going to go? To the nearest town. And there we have the domino effect again. If you look at who actually makes the crossover from a developing country and from the Middle East and from Northern Africa into Europe, it starts with the boys because they think they can get a job. So the percentage of women migrating is lower than those of the men. So people think it's not a women's issue. Well, I'll tell you, it's a finance issue because the boy found the money and the women couldn't get the money. So it's lots of times that, again, it starts with the original mindset. How do we prepare women for floods? Really prepare. Not just say the flood is coming, but saying this is where you can go. How do we prepare women for drought? How do we help them to raise other crops if it's in a rural area so that they don't need so much money, so much water, sorry, and money, by the way. So it starts with the original non-policy to help those women. And I think this is a real worry because it will get worse. And it's not just the older female being the head of the household, but it influences also her girls, her daughters, because they can't go to school. They have only seen poverty. They only have seen that their mother works her ass off, excuse me, and has no free time for herself. So the whole mindset is, as far as I'm concerned, is causing the main problem. That it's caused by climate change, yes. But if you ask those women, is this climate change? They'll probably tell you, what are you talking about? But if you ask them about, do you have a drought or did you have a flood? They will say, yes, 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 and many more than in my mother's time. So they know what it is, they just don't know the jargon. And that's another thing we don't accept, that women are using plain language to say, this is the impact on my life. And if they don't speak the policy language, they will not be heard. So that's another thing we have to change. And one very small thing for everybody from us that works in government, let's get rid of the protocol. Because if you want to have the real speakers and the real experts, you will not get them if you keep following diplomatic protocol. Because it's the guy who is the director or the secretary general and as long as we haven't addressed that, make sure that you get experts in there and not just the ones with the formal authority. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Lesha. I would like to launch a question then to the rest of the audience. I see Anfie wants to come in. With regard to what you have just said, to which extent something can be done to change the access to education for women and not just perhaps even if they manage to get it primary education, to secondary education, because one of the things that we see is that when international organizations or governments give international aid and provide these opportunities to go to another country to study, it's for university education. If you do not have the primary and secondary education first, and many women still don't have access to it, how are they going to get to university and get the technical knowledge? And I totally agree, obviously, with the language that is used to create the policies, to transmit the messages that need to be heard. So I would like to know the opinion of the panel. Thank you, Lesha, for agreeing. With regard to education, how that can be changed. Anfie?
Yes, thank you very much, Rosa. I wanted to add something to the whole migration thing, actually, first, if you allow me, and take it, continue actually on what Lesha presented, and touch a little bit upon the overall migration that is not only climate change induced, but migration where you have large number of people actually moving into transit or destination countries, and what you do with them there. And I think that we all agree that the situation in their own country is given, especially when it comes to the impacts of climate change, the lack of opportunities for women, the difficulty to diversify their economic activities, and so on. And unsurprisingly and very sadly, this situation perpetuates, whether in the transit or in the destination countries. So you still have the same model in operation, where men, they go to get the jobs, women stay at home or at whatever facilities exist, okay, to accommodate them. And then these opportunities and the access to resources and to employment, again, are scarce, if not existing. So it is a matter that we have to address, I think, widely, and look into this migration employment situation. We have been looking into that actually quite attentively, linking actually water to employment and migration. And thankfully, this is part of the overall agenda of the Union for the Mediterranean. So it comes also at the higher political level, so to prompt some action on that. But I think that we need to focus also on the employability opportunities and how to support women in the different stages or wherever they are to do something and be able to contribute equally and get their place over there. Very briefly, because I don't want to take the time from the colleagues, on your question regarding
Hello again.
Just about the education.
Yes, one second, please. It seems that we have had some technical issues and we have lost the communication with the conference. So I would like to apologize first to everybody who has seen just silence. We are back online, so we are going to continue with our debate. I think people managed to hear MIREIA and her mention about the specific issues with women migrating and the issues related to sex trafficking and violence against women. I think Aisha wanted to come with regard to education. Aisha, please go ahead.
Thank you, Rosa. Yes, I would like to say something about what Lesha said about, I think it was Anfie, about tailor-making our education curriculums that actually help people understand women, especially in rural communities, for example, to help them understand what climate change is all about and how it's affecting them, and also allow them to share their views on how we can generate solutions together. So these could be community-based solutions when we come together and engage communities as pertinent stakeholders in these issues of socioeconomic and environment situations. For example, using anthropological methods of learning from the communities, and also helping the communities learn from us, and also the environment activists and gender equality activists, like creating small conversations, allowing these conversations to go on maybe vis-a-vis the conference or the workshops, because sometimes when we even call women to these workshops in villages, they will say, oh, that is for the men. They'll not go to participate because they think it's a man supposed to be in this kind of conferences, or maybe even rooms, or sharing halls at the community. However, if you go to the community and allow small manageable number of group discussions or conversations, you'll find that you learn a lot from these informal conversations in an anthropological manner of trying to understand how we can work together, and hope that people also learn from you. Also, supporting women is very important, because you find that they are also overburdened with economic responsibilities. They are the ones that actually are doing the work, sometimes even not as we perceive it as men are the ones doing the work. In villages, for example, here in Uganda, you find that the women are the ones going to the gardens, they're carrying the children, they're riding the bicycles, and they have to fetch for the water also, and the fuel for cooking. So you find that they're doing a lot. And sometimes all they need is maybe support their small businesses. So what, for example, we do in our organization is we help when we construct pipe mini water grids, we collect a very small fee, because we help people pay for, we help people understand that they need to pay for water, because if water is not paid for, it will not be valued. So it has to be paid for a very small price to cater for the operations and maintenance, but we also get off a small percentage to give women loans, small affordable loans, to boost their small businesses. So we give these loans to women in business, women who have small businesses like vegetable gardens, maybe restaurants, maybe salons. They use water on a daily basis, but they do not have water. So what do? We say we give you water in the communities, and we get off a percentage from the water fee collected, and we give the rural women small affordable loans, and every loan we pay back enables another woman to access a loan to boost their small businesses, so they can stay in business and they don't fall out of business, because if they fall out of business, this will mean poverty, and they won't be able to access, afford clean water supply, and you find that they'll go back to overusing the natural open water sources which are available. This will lead to depletion, exasperate climate change, and all the negative effects of climate change. So we support women with education in a language they understand, and also with financial support services, because they also lack support. Some women lack access to credit, financial services, like access to information and knowledge. So if we come together collectively, we can do much to be able to help ourselves. And also women they are guardians of indigenous knowledge. So with their education, it's very important that we learn from them. They learn from us in a language that they really understand.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Very practical ideas. I would like to bring Melissa now as well to contribute on this area, and perhaps coming from your organization, you look into data investments and opportunities like that. Several speakers have already mentioned the issue of financing and investment. How does it all come together, or is still not coming, doesn't come together to help alleviate this situation? Melissa?
Thank you. So, and thank you, Rosa. So not specifically on migration and education, so broader.
You can comment on migration and education as well, absolutely.
Okay, no, but just to make sure. Now, I would like actually to come back to all the concrete solutions that have been proposed so far, and there were many actually since the beginning of this panel. So some of them include, for example, MIREIA mentioned quotas in policies. Anfie and Aisha in particular mentioned awareness, raising, education, and gender mainstreaming in policies. Aisha mentioned to create a space for women of all backgrounds to increase bargaining power, and also just now community involvement. And for all these solutions to be implemented, we need one essential step, which is to assess the situation. We need concrete data in order to influence the situation, which is and to influence decision makers. So because one cannot improve what cannot be measured. So we see that there is more and more data at project level. So especially the projects funded by the European Union, there is a requirement to assess the gender dimension of the project. And we have more and more data showing that the more you involve women at project level, at local level, it shows that the system becomes more efficient, more sustainable, more inclusive. That there is literature and data on that, but it's not centralized. The data is not yet centralized, and at the national level, we don't have enough studies showing the impacts of involving women. So I'll just give one example. In 2020, only 7 countries collected gender disaggregated data related to the environment, as I said in the video. It means that we don't know actually if we involve more women, what's the impact on environmental policies and projects. So what I just want to say that for all of that, we need to collaborate all together and to produce data that will be used at scale to raise awareness. But also, if we want to implement quotas, as MIREIA said, we need a proper assessment of the current situation.
Thank you very much. Lesha, you are on mute, and I see that you wanted to come.
Yes, apologies. I wanted to follow up on what Melissa said. For one, some of the research that OECD has done was together with Women for Water Partnership. So where we looked at was mainly at the impact of women's participation. So not so much on how many women were in the room or what percentage was represented, but if you have a woman in the room at the table, did the decision-making style change? Did the arguments change? Did the decision-making on what proposals are actually accepted change? And there's still very little research on that. I think the OECD Women for Water research on that covered basically everything that's available online, which is something else than that there might be more out there that we don't know about, but was not published that way. One of the interesting part was that most of the data and the information we got was from the private sector. So they came up with much more ideas and effects than the public sector. So that's something to think about. And I'm happy, Melissa, to continue our research on this very, very much. Let's talk to Ariana and Aziza in the near future how we're going to do that, because I think we have an idea. So having said that, just one more remark on the migration and the vocational training, if I may. One of the things we found, both in Uganda and in Jordan, in 2 projects, was that if we educated women in non-traditional jobs, like being a plumber, being a carpenter, being a mechanic, was not easy to establish. But once it happened, it changed the settings very, very much, both for the women, because they got a possibility to earn an income on a profession, whereas there is a big lack. People are happy to have those women. And at the same time, they solve a problem a lot of companies have. So for instance, that men cannot go into the houses to do repairs because that's not allowed. But the women can. So it does not only solve the problem of the woman, but it also solves the problem of the company involved, because they can do much more maintenance and work during the day than otherwise would be possible. And the effects both in Uganda and Jordan were that women who were in the refugee camps got a possibility to go out and earn money. And the government allowed that because they saw the problem of the companies. So this was like a win-win situation, so to speak. And I would love to expand on those ideas. And this is not at the academic level. Anfie, I totally see your point. More than, I mean, one of the things we're working on is mentoring for those groups of women. But the other one is that the mid-level, yeah, the expert, the professional, the team leader, there is the biggest lack. And we're not using the women's potential to actually fill that gap, which is essential for combating climate change and essential for water management. So more ideas like that, and elevate that and put it into programs would be really, really helpful. And that's vocational training, mid-level, I would say, for women in non-traditional jobs, if you want it in a policy sentence.
Thank you very much, Lesha. I would like to give the opportunity to Gadir to intervene as well on this topic, or otherwise we have been receiving a number of questions from the audience. I would like to come into one of them. For instance, there are too many talks about the role of women. As a woman, I'm tired to hear it as we are a minority or a marginal group. It is better to be treated as equal and not to ask more attention than other members of society. I guess we can all agree on that. And somebody else mentioned, is it not just as discriminated that more attractive women and men receive more attention than others less physically appealing? Is gender disequality also the result of our being a superficial image-based society? A very provocative thought. I think my favorite is, in this case, will we one day talk about people using only their name and not identify them by talking of their gender? So this is for all the panelists to think about, because we have just 15 minutes left. But in the meantime, Gadir, if you would like to intervene into the commentary of the rest of the panelists, perhaps on migration, education, and yes, the like.
Yes, actually, I would like to first to comment about the discrimination against women I don't think so, actually, because you know, if we look at the education, we have very high qualified women who educated very well, and if they want to complete, for example, they study to get a PhD or another degree, so they face a lack of opportunities, maybe because they have children, maybe because she is pregnant or so on. So all of these issues prevent her from continue or giving her an opportunity like her colleague, the men. So this is one of the discrimination I think against women. And also regarding the migration, I agree on what my colleagues said, and I want to also add that migration, of course, affects women greatly because, as I said, women have children, and sometimes they have to take care of them and bring them or combining their children with them. So this may make difficult for women to transit from country to another or migrate from place to another. So this will hinder and give lack of opportunity to get a new life, for example. And also, from my opinion, to quarantine when it comes to make sure if we want to give one of the solution for this tackling this problem, gender inequality, and linking it with the climate change. So I think giving a quota to the number of representation of women to be equal with the number of the representations of men in any board or anybody, and it is should be legally binding, as the voice of women must be heard. So their participation in the decision-making process and their inclusion in finding solutions and contributing to working to tackle the climate change issues with hand by hand with her male colleagues. So not only that, but also we should strengthen women's capabilities and defining their personalities to become leaders and giving them opportunities similar to men in order to reach to the top levels, which is very important matters that would address the issue of the gender inequality at all. And also, I think if we think why still till now we have yet to address this issue, the gender equality. And indeed, I think from my point of view, maybe perhaps the increase of the world population and the population inflation is one of the global reasons that caused the increase the poverty, and also the poor people, you know, become more. Their number is increasing, so they will have a lack of opportunities to have one of the, let's say, to have a role in this life. So maybe this will make it difficult to deal with the gender issues and dealing with men and women alike. And it hinders the development in drawing a clear stereotype of gender equality, and also dealing with this case in an equal manner. So this, I think, one of the issue, and also maybe, as my colleagues also say, the laws and policy enforce maybe play a role in accelerating or slow down addressing this important issue. As we know that in one country, important steps have already been taken in addressing the issue of gender inequality, but in other countries, progress is still slow and needs further development in order to tackle this issue.
Thank you very much, Gadir. I think we are arriving to the last part of this panel. So thinking about the ideas that have been shared so far and the questions and comments from the audience that I have shared with you a few minutes ago, I would like each of the panelists perhaps to summarize their main ideas and point of view in the next couple of minutes, particularly perhaps making a mention about some of those comments. Like, for instance, some of you mentioned that the private sector has been doing more in some countries than the public sector. So what's the role of governments in solving all the issues that we have been talking about, both in less developed countries and in developed countries as well? Mireia, would you like to speak first, please?
Yes, I want. It's clear that we governments, we should take this task of fight against the consequences of climate crisis. It's clear that the private sector should do its own part, but it's the main part. I think the leadership of the measures against climate change must be taken by the government. So we have this task to do. This is on our part. I think we have to work on two ways. The one is to affront now and today these consequences that are already now here. We have already now the risks of the climate change, and of course those who come in the next years or next decades. But also we have to work today and now for the gender equality, because one thing is absolutely related with the other. In the measure we have less equality today, it will be worse for the consequences, especially for women tomorrow. So most inequality, most risk for everyone, but especially for women and for child, who are unfortunately the face of the poverty today in the world. So it's our task, it's our mission, and I hope we will be able to affront and to give answers and explanations to the population of the world. I hope.
Thank you very much, Mireia. Could we have now Melissa, perhaps?
Sure. So as Leisha said, the private sector is already implementing several, is trying things, sorry, to put women at the center of projects and trying to change, but it's still too slow. And the government, the main role of the government is to create the enabling framework and conditions for this systemic change to happen. I think we can all agree on this. And there are many solutions. And again, some of them were mentioned today, but others we didn't have time to discuss them. So we talked about quotas and mainstreaming gender policies. And what I wanted to say with regard to your question, Rosa, on the differences between, let's say, OECD, like northern countries and countries and developing countries, I think we can all learn from one another. And I'm thinking about, for example, the gender strategy in Rwanda, in Kenya. They are implementing several, policies that are very that are inspiring for other countries. And I think that's what we are also trying to do at the OECD, is to make sure that these knowledge are exchanged across countries, across cities, and that we all learn from one another.
Thank you very much, Melissa. I think I'm going to go with the order I see in my screen. So, Lesha, would you like to come in, please, just in a couple of minutes?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting. And what I also hear is that we still also have to talk to each other a little bit more. Because sometimes I see another context of our answers, and that might create confusion or might make us less effective. So on the one hand, I'm also always saying, don't preach to the converted. But I'm not talking about preaching to the converted, but from the ideas that we have more exchanges on what that means in daily practice, and whether a solution for one problem might be not working in another area or vice versa. But I think we have a few things in common. I think we're all aware that we have these set frames in our heads about this is the role of women, or this is good practice, and that we have to challenge ourselves even more on those perceptions. I think it's also extremely important that we showcase more, even than we're trying to do, what women already do. Because like I said earlier, there are women who are actually taking measures against the effects of climate change, but they are not acknowledged. Although they could be really workable solutions. So one thing we can do, at least my group of people, my network, is trying to do, is showcase what women are already doing and how we can upscale or multiply that. I think that's very important for us to look at. It's also something that the government can support. You know, instead of giving it to the next idea and having innovation and a new pilot, which governments do tend to do, go and look for the good examples that are already there and help them to upscale and multiply, to help other women's groups to raise awareness and teach each other. So I think part of it is also the focus of the money. Sometimes it's not even the amount, but it's where are you focusing it and who are you giving it to? And that's typically something donors and countries and governments can decide on. And I think rethinking that is extremely important. Last but not least, what I think is extremely important, that we don't presume that if we put something on the website or in a webinar, that it will reach all these women, because it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And that's something that really worries me, because there's a lot of stuff that they should know to be able to shape their actions and their possibilities, but that information doesn't reach them. And going to places and having a meeting in the town hall, I know, is very labor intensive. But if we don't do that, then, you know, to be honest, the UN statistics tell us that 42% of the world population, you hear me correctly, has no access to ICT, mobile phones, or something similar. No access whatsoever. So the notion that if we put something on the net, that it will help all these people, no, that's not true. And we have to rethink our communication strategies in that respect. And I know Corona is not making it easier for us. I know that, but maybe we should make plans already now for when Corona is not restricting us. And you know, don't think that what we did the last 2 years is going to be enough, because it isn't.
I need to.
That would be my comment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We are reaching 11 now, so very quickly, Anfie, if you would like to give your conclusions.
Yes, thank you very much, Rosa, and thank you very much, colleagues. Allow me to maybe touch very briefly on the whole issue, because some of the participants, touched upon it, on the victimization of women and how we see each other. And let us maybe clarify from the very start, at least from my personal point of view, that I totally resent this whole process, considering it totally, irrelevant and inappropriate. However, it is very often that we women place the obstacles, in front of us by ourselves. Having worked for the last years, together with the Geneva Water Hub and 93 women from Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, Egypt, and Morocco, on identifying the obstacles and ways to facilitate the access to more leadership and decision-making positions of women in water diplomacy and transboundary water cooperation settings. What we did find was that, to a very large extent, it is the perception of women on what they can do and the confidence in their abilities and the prospects and access to opportunities themselves, their perception, okay, that came forth. Thank you, Lisha. So this is actually quite telling. And we did focus on the public sector. There will be a very nice complementary work together with what OECD and Women for Water Partnership are doing. The important thing, and let me close with that, is that we need to be leading by example. So, talking is fine, but there's nothing stronger than, to see and practice what we preach. And the last thing is that we cannot continue talking about these issues alone without men. We really have to get them in, because this is actually what gender is about, and not only women. And we do need to differentiate between female empowerment and gender equality. They're very different things. So let us also be a little bit accurate on this. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if Gadir is still with us to give her final comments. Maybe there is issues with connections. If not, Aisha, would you like to come in? We are finishing. This is the end of the panel. If in 1 or 2 minutes, would you can give your final ideas, please?
Well, I just want to thank very much the organizers of the conference. I want to thank the audience. I want to thank the participants. I like really the energy and all the wonderful deliberations, and of course our moderator, Ms. Rosa. So my conclusive remarks will be that there is indeed need for collaboration, multi-sectoral collaboration, multinational collaboration to support and amplify the voice of women towards gender equality, inequality and climate change. This will really reduce the vulnerabilities of women. This will reduce and mitigate the diverse effects of climate change. So Lesha has really mentioned about donors looking into supporting grassroots organizations and civil society organizations like our very own, because this is a community-based organization, and some of our challenges are limited finance to be able to engage the communities, create solutions together, implement. But if we come together multi-sectoral, multinational, then we are going to be able to support women, women-led approaches, and also together women and men, because gender equality is an issue for men and women. It's a rights issue, and it's for all of the sexes. All of us are included. So mainstreaming the gender equality issue as a cross-cutting issue in climate change, in environment, is going to go a long way in helping to curb the problems and also addressing the gaps and the challenges of climate change and gender inequality. Thank you very much for listening to me. Once again, I'm Aisha from Rika, Uganda.
Thank you very much, Aisha. That concludes our panel today. So I just want to thank everybody for their participation. First of all, our wonderful panelists with all those ideas and commentaries straight on the money, I would say. And I would like to also thank the audience for their patience and for their provocative questions as well. I hope everybody has enjoyed. And this concludes this panel 5 session. I will call for a round of a virtual applause for everybody who has participated. Thank you, everyone.